Welcome to the Once Upon a Sunday Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Josh Kimmel, Dave Campbell, and Justin Bowerly.
And welcome back to the Once Upon a Sunday Fantasy Football Podcast, live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and X. It is me, Justin, your host for the week. Josh is not going to be able to make it today, tomorrow, and most likely Friday. He's kind of dealing with that little hurricane that's down in the Gulf right now. Everybody at OUS really hopes that him and Dave make it through this weekend or this week with not a lot of things happening to them. So we're thinking about you, Josh. We miss you already. It's only been a minute. It's just me so far, but we do have somebody coming on today. So it's not just going to be me talking at you through a microphone. Let's go and bring him in. Derek, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. And yeah, definitely thinking about you, Josh and Dave. Hope it's not as bad as they're saying it's going to be.
Hopefully.
I will do my best Justin. I'll do my best Justin impression today while you do your Josh impression, Justin, and we'll get through it.
So you get to be the person that everybody hates on the show. Okay, cool. It's weird. The season started off. Justin was the liked person on the show, and now Justin is the tool bag on the show that makes bad takes. So, you live long enough to be the hero, or see yourself become the villain, or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, let's talk about something like that. I don't know. Let's get on to, of course, Derek, you are the new host of a show for Once Upon a Sunday called Too Many Leagues. Can you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, sure. So me and my co-host Aaron, we talk about dynasty fantasy football, how to kind of manage your dynasty teams in season right now. We're putting out a show every other week, so we'll have one this week. We put out our first one 2 weeks ago, so go check that out. So we talk about all things dynasty, how to, what trades you should be making, how you should be evaluating your team mid-season, all that good stuff. We'll talk about rookies in the upcoming class a little later in the year. So check us out.
Yeah, it's an awesome show. You can catch all of their shows on our YouTube channel at OUSFPOD, or you can catch them on the website, or you can like and subscribe them on anywhere you listen to a podcast at right now. Again, that's called Too Many Leagues, because we are all part of too many leagues. Let's get on to talk about the injuries. So a lot of injuries, as always, of course, but some impactful ones. Aaron Rodgers has an ankle injury. He's expected to be good to go for week 6, which is good for the Jets, I guess. They are currently in a little bit of a transition mode after firing their head coach, Robert Saleh. I know I said injury news, but this is a breaking news as of this morning. Robert Saleh is no longer the head coach for the New York Jets. I assumed, what's his face? The guy that you teased us with getting fired.
Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, Nathaniel Hackett is going to be the interim head coach. He is not. It's going to be the defensive coordinator that is going to be the interim head coach. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are just kind of a dumpster fire right now. Everyone, there's a lot of optimism coming into this year with Aaron Rodgers healthy. Maybe that offense would kind of find its footing. They've scored the same number of points through 5 games as they did last year with Zach Wilson. So it just hasn't really happened for him yet. Rodgers did look great against the Patriots a couple weeks ago. But I mean, that's kind of like looking great against a JV team at this point. So, you kind of hope that maybe changing things up will turn that team around and Rodgers can get healthy and that offense can start scoring us some fantasy points, because it's been rough if you have Breece Hall on a fantasy team. You finally got a good week out of Garrett Wilson, but gotta hope that maybe this change will turn things around for them.
Yeah. Moving on, Aaron Jones is to undergo an MRI on his hip this week. The Vikings are on a bye week this week, so he does have an extra week to rest. So hopefully he is back for week 7. Let's see. That's a defensive player. Will Levis's shoulder is expected to practice later this week. They were on a bye week in week 5, so he is improving to play for week 6. David Njoku is to undergo an MRI. I just saw this. He just came back and he's already injured again.
Yeah, it's rough at
That
tight end.
sucks.
It's been a rough tight end year.
That sucks. This is not fantasy relevant, but for the sake of the player I'm going to mention, but it is fantasy relevant for their team. Right guard Will Fries is placed on the IR after fracturing his right tibia. His right tibia. He is the right guard for the Indianapolis Colts. So that is a tough loss for that offensive line who was starting to do well. That could affect the running game. That could affect the passing game. That could affect a lot of things. So not necessarily a player that you say that's a fantasy impact, but it is a fantasy impact adjacent. Zach Moss has an ankle injury. He is believed to be okay for week 6. Ricky Pearsall will not have his practice window opened ahead of week 6. I like to think of this segment as Justin reads the news in real time because it's literally just me going through the injury report and going, oh my, what happened here? Anthony Richardson remains the Colts starter when healthy. That's what the Colts said. It's what I keep telling all of you, but nobody wants to believe me.
Nobody wants that, I think, at this point, after seeing what Flacco's doing for, the fancy relevant players on the Colts.
Listen, Flacco has had 3 good drives.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have to be a good NFL quarterback for us to want him in there for fantasy. Like, I have Josh Downs in a lot of leagues, and I'm just not looking forward to AR coming back. Although I root for AR. I have him, and I think he'll. We kind of wanted him to break fantasy football a little bit, but he hasn't yet.
So some good news here for a lot of my teams. AJ Brown dealing with that hamstring issue and Devonta Smith dealing with the concussion issue are both expected to return in week 6. We finally get some top tier players back from injury. Let's hope they stay healthy because both of these guys, AJ Brown's a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. Devonta Smith is a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy. These are 2 huge impacts. And getting them both back in week 6 doesn't only help them in your fantasy team, it also helps Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert and a lot of other players. So that is, I cannot wait for them to get back.
Yeah, good injury news is good. I like that.
On the flip side, Nico Collins has a hamstring issue, and he is week to week. It was day to day. They have switched to week. So we will see what happens with Nico. Hamstring issues are never good for the wide receiver position. I mean, AJ Brown has missed almost the entire season, and Christian Watson can never have a healthy hamstring. It's like so.
Yeah, and I think Nico was injured on that long touchdown. I think that was his last
play. That was
the game.
So. Yeah, he got injured on that 74-yard touchdown. So
yeah, hope he's all right. He's had a great year.
Speaking of Texans, Joe Mixon is still having that ankle injury, or still dealing with the ankle injury he suffered in week 3, I think. His status for week 6 is still up in the air, so that's something to monitor this week. Brian Robinson Jr. is still dealing with that knee injury and is continuing to be monitored. I think they should have just sat him like I thought they were going to do, but they didn't. So that's fun for me. Khalil Shakir is still dealing with an ankle injury. He is remaining day to day. We're going to talk about Bills receivers a lot today. Specifically because of Khalil Shakir. Let's see. Kendra Miller will not practice Monday. I feel like he just came back and now he's injured again. Travis Etienne was held out late after getting popped in the shoulder on Sunday. So maybe his lack of production was because he got, quote, popped in the shoulder.
Yeah, his snaps definitely went down, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yep. Rashee Rice, this is the big one here. May only need an LCL repaired and expected to make a full recovery. I think we saw something about he should still miss the remainder of the 2024 season. So not surprised there.
I think that's the expectation. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't see this last night. Derek Carr has an oblique issue and is questionable to return. That's the same thing that Anthony Richardson is also dealing with. So, and that's the same thing that Kenneth Walker missed several games for, was that oblique issue. So this could be something to really watch going forward. Jake Haener supposedly is supposed to be the quarterback the rest of the way if Carr is unable to return, but they also have rookie Spencer Rattler sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, last night Haener came in. I believe Rattler was the emergency quarterback, but yeah, I would watch that this week if Carr is going to miss any time. Who knows? I mean, they'll probably go with Haener, but there's a chance they'll go with Rattler. And Derek Carr, though, I mean, he's a guy that usually bounces back pretty quickly from injuries. Last year, he had some chest injury. They thought it was going to be a multiple week injury. He didn't miss a game. So we'll see with him, but that impacts, I mean, that will impact Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara. So definitely one to watch.
Yeah. You never want the quarterback for a lot of explosive players get hurt, because that changes how they play, unless you're the Colts and then you want Flacco to play, and then because all of their wide receivers do better. But that's neither here nor there. The last time Carr has missed extended time, I was trying to go back and look.
So when he broke his leg with the Raiders, was that that's the only time I can think of?
2022, he missed week 6 against Cincinnati. I don't remember what the injury was. Oh, and he missed week 17 and 18 also.
That was, I think
that was his last. He was benched.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it was last year. It was Las Vegas. The last time he really missed a lot of time, which actually was at the end of the season, was when he broke his leg on Christmas Eve. So against the Colts,
missed the playoffs there too. I think that Raiders team was really good.
Yeah, anyway. they were expected to be pretty good. So
yeah.
So that's the injury news. That's all I've got.
One more. I'm just gonna throw one more in. Josh Allen is not in concussion protocol, for what that's worth. So I think there was some thought he might go into concussion protocol, even though he stayed in that game, but that is not the case. So he is, from what we can tell, good to go.
He was knocked out on that play, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
he was lights out.
He was.
I missed one play.
Missed one play. Yeah. Yep.
Maybe it's the AFC East doctors. I don't.
They play Monday night this week, I believe. Yeah, I don't know. It definitely seemed, and I saw some doctors on Twitter saying he should not have been going back in that game. I don't know. That's something the NFL is going to have to figure out. I think it's just, I did not like seeing him return to that game after very clearly getting. I mean, he was
knocked out.
He was not with us there for a moment.
He was lights out. Yeah, he was definitely lights out, the way he had said. So that's not a good look. Josh Allen is supposed to be one of the best humans on earth at football, and not having him in the game is tough. So let's get right into the waivers. So on our list to talk about today, my stream is messing up. Hopefully you can see Daniel Jones below me. Can you see Daniel Jones below me?
I can see it. Yeah.
See anything. So this is great. This has been doing this to me the last couple shows, and it's really hard to produce a show when you can't see what you're producing. Anyways, Daniel Jones last week scored 22.1 points. He is 12% rostered. He doesn't have a bye week until week 11. The Giants are humming. And over the last 3 weeks, he has finished as QB 13, which in one QB leagues, that's just right outside your top 12. He is almost a starting quarterback in one QB leagues, and I cannot believe we're saying this after we tried to put Daniel Jones to rest. He will not go down easily this year. He's been pretty consistent this season with the addition of Neighbors, and even without Neighbors, he still finished with 22.1 points with Wan'Dale Robinson, without Devin Singletary. Without the majority of the offense, Daniel Jones still performed last week, and I can't believe it.
I mean, I was kind of bullish on Jones. I don't know if you remember, Justin. You guys kind of poked fun at me a little bit, but he had a really good 2022 when he had that full season with Daboll. Last year got cut short, but he did not look good at all. He got to a slow start this year. But week 1, he was horrible, but that was against Minnesota, who we now know might have the best passing defense in the league. And other than that, he's been really solid. And turns out Malik Neighbors is that dude, and he's getting him
Who
back
would have
this
thought?
week. I know. Yeah. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
And he has a really great matchup this week. Cincinnati hasn't been able to stop anybody.
Nope.
So yeah, I mean, I go get Daniel Jones especially if your quarterback's on bye this week or you are streaming quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is a guy to grab. And looking not to get too far ahead and talk playoffs, but his playoff schedule: Baltimore, Atlanta, and Indianapolis, weeks 15 through 17. And right now, those look like pretty good matchups. So looking ahead, he could be a valuable guy to have late in the year also.
Yeah, and even looking at the short term, Cincinnati and Philly has been pretty good for QB play. They allow some of the most points to the quarterback position, and then at Pittsburgh 3 weeks from now. He's got a pretty favorable matchup over the next 3 weeks. So Daniel Jones is somebody that I would look at picking up because he could be a top 10 quarterback over the next 3 weeks.
For sure. And they didn't have Singletary this week either.
Yeah.
So they were without their top running back and top wide receiver. Theo Johnson got into the offense a little bit. I'm the Giants really impressed me this week, and I think Daniel Jones could see this continue.
Yeah. So talking about somebody else that has been pretty mid over the last couple of years, Cam Akers, only rostered in 41% of the leagues. Assuming Joe Mixon does not play this week, because things are pointing to the fact that he probably will not play again this week, and he's been out for a while now. Cam Akers has been serviceable. He's taken over the role from Dameon Pierce and pretty much anybody else on that offense, running the ball at least. 12.7 points last week, RB 36 over the last 3 weeks. And again, I don't think he played 3 weeks ago, so that doesn't help. He has a favorable matchup against New England this week. Then he goes to Green Bay, and then he has Indy. I'm going to assume that Mixon is back by time they get to Indy, but say Mixon is still not good to go, and say Mixon for some reason still can't play in 3 weeks. That's a very favorable 3-week span there.
Yeah,
I like him. It's not somebody that I think I'm going to go all in to get Cam Akers, but if you're hurting with a running back, you have an Aaron Jones who's got a bye week and maybe an injury. You have Mixon. You have some of these other guys that have been injured. Akers might be somebody to as a stopgap to get you through the next week.
Yeah, I mean, he has a good matchup this week. They should be playing, it should be a relatively good game script for Houston. They should be able to handle New England. He was outsnapped by Dare Agun Bawale. I can never get his last name right. But he was outsnapped by him. So proceed with caution with Cam Akers. I think if you really need a guy this week, though, you have a running back on bye or injuries, that sort of thing. He's maybe a low end RB2, high end RB3, maybe. But it's kind of a mixed bag with him. You're kind of hoping for that good game script and for him to fall into the end zone once.
Yeah, and with the injury to Nico, that does open him up in the passing game a little bit more as well. Not a lot, but it does open up just a little bit. He had 3 targets last week. That's not great, but he had 3 targets. That's getting him more involved. Only seeing 32% of the snap share against Buffalo, but they were in a shootout where they had to pass the ball a lot to stay up ahead of them.
Agun Bawale had 6 catches on 7 targets, and he had 15 carries for 30 yards.
That's
so
actually pretty solid. Why did I not
horrible
see this
efficiency
guy on the waiver?
Yeah,
maybe just pick up a Texans running back.
Yeah, pick up a Texans running back because it is going to be a bit of a split, and I think they go with whoever's the hot hand at the time. So, and also keep an eye and see if Dameon Pierce comes back because he's been injured as well. But it's kind of a weird backfield, but there are going to be points there from one of these guys because we do expect the running backs to be involved against New England this week. So take a look at our Texans running backs, see which ones are available in your league. And if you are desperate for your RB2 or a flex, you could do worse than plugging one of those guys in.
One of the guys that I would be going out to get over both of those guys would be Roschon Johnson, rostered in 16% of the leagues. His next 3 weeks looks pretty decent. Jacksonville in London. That's always a tough game, especially going up against Jacksonville. Those overseas games are heavily involved in the run. They're basically Thursday night football games for the most part, except for when you have Justin Jefferson, you throw the ball a lot. And then in 3 weeks, he's got Washington. Roschon Johnson, since taking over the backfield in week 3, he has been the best running back in Chicago. This is exactly, I think, what you would hope to see DeAndre Swift do, which DeAndre Swift is picking up, I know, but it's Roschon Johnson's also getting work done, which has been nice.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is, we're in week 6 now. Waiver wires have been picked through a little bit. So you're kind of looking for guys that we think might have a little bit of upside. And there's a possibility Roschon Johnson sees his snap share go up over the course of the season. They have their bye week next week after the London game. Teams sometimes kind of take a look at their tape over the first part of the season and see who's playing better than others. And you see guys like Roschon Johnson, second-year player, playing well. Maybe his snap share goes up. So it's he scored 2 touchdowns last week. He scored a touchdown the week before. He's getting a little bit of that goal line work. He has replaced Khalil Herbert, who he at least leapfrogged him in the depth chart. And DeAndre Swift has been a guy who throughout his career has been inconsistent. He's looked a little better this year, but take a look at Roschon Johnson. He's getting some work and he's doing his best with it.
Roschon is one of those guys that he is their red zone back. 7 rushes for only 15 yards, but 3 touchdowns in the red zone. DeAndre Swift only has the 1 touchdown off of 12 carries.
Yeah.
So Roschon is a little bit more effective in the red zone, which has been pretty nice. So
yeah, and I wouldn't worry too much about that poor efficiency either, since he is getting a lot of those red zone carries. They're not as many yards to get. So 1 carry for 1 yard and a touchdown. It's that's 1 yard per carry.
Yeah, but I'm more focused on the 3 touchdowns versus the 1 touchdown. So that's
right.
It seems like Roschon is actually getting it into the end zone. He's a little bit more of a powerful player. DeAndre Swift likes to go outside, which is what hurts him. One of those plays, it was like a negative 12-yard run. So that does hurt.
But on the topic of the Bears, that offense looked much better this past week. Granted, against the Panthers. So, what a brutal game to have to watch if you're a Panthers fan. You have DJ Moore scoring 2 touchdowns. You traded in that same trade. You traded the pick that became Caleb Williams, and then the pick that you got for that trade is sitting on your bench. It's just like
he came in at the end of the game. I heard
he did come in at the end of the game and had some of maybe his best fantasy performance. A top 5 fantasy performance for Bryce Young and the 5 minutes he played at the end of that game. But tough times to be a Panthers fan, if they exist. I don't know.
At least they've seen the Super Bowl twice. They've lost the Super Bowl twice, but that was Bryce Young's second best fantasy game this year, and he's only played in 3 games. So, and he had 3.12 points.
Yeah, and he didn't have many better games last year either. He had a great game against the Packers toward the end of the season, and that's pretty much it for the career Bryce Young so far.
Single-digit fantasy.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
That's tough for Bryce Young. Let's talk about some good news here. Josh Downs. This is a guy that I know you like a lot. Josh Downs has seemingly become the wide receiver 1 in Indy. He's not. He's not. But seemingly has become wide receiver 1 in Indy with Joe Flacco. He is rostered in 38% of leagues. He scored 15.9 last week. He's been wide receiver 22 over the last 3 weeks. And he's got an interesting next 3 matchups at Tennessee, against Miami, and at Houston. Against Miami will be interesting because Tua is not back yet. So that offense is not going yet. That defense, I don't know what's going on with Miami, but without Tua, they're a high school football team that's playing in the NFL. It's bad. And
they beat the Patriots this past week. But
somehow beat the Patriots.
It's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
I made a joke. To some friends. I'm like, is Tua the MVP of the NFL this year? Because you take him out of that offense and they're shut down.
Yeah. He is. So Josh Downs is getting the most targets in Indy right now and has 4 targets in the red zone, which is the most in Indy. With Joe Flacco, he has been incredible. I don't think any of us have to tell you that. I'm surprised Josh Downs is still only rostered in 38% of Yahoo and ESPN leagues. He scored 22 points last week. He scored almost 16 points this week. He's playing in 2/3 of the snaps every week. He's gotten 17 targets over the last 2 weeks. He should be rostered in more leagues at this point.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at, well, Alec Pierce is getting a lot of points too. Alec Pierce is like a Rashid Shaheed. He needs that big play to be fantasy relevant. Um, for Alec Pierce, every week he's gotten a lot of points. He scores a touchdown. I hate to say it, Alec Pierce is a very touchdown dependent player, whereas Josh Downs isn't. He didn't score a touchdown last week. He still almost put up 16 points. He's very effective on the offense. He's getting the ball when nobody else is.
Yeah, in a PPR league, Josh Downs has an incredibly high floor right now, especially with Flacco dropping back on on basically every snap. He's a bit of a PPR scam last week. He had 9 catches for 69 yards. Not really the efficiency we look for in like a yards per route run basis, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day because you got 16 points out of it. So yeah, I mean, I like Josh Downs as long as Joe Flacco is the quarterback. Now, when Anthony Richardson comes back, we're going to have to see what that offense looks like. We might see the target numbers go down pretty quickly for Josh Downs. But yeah, I mean, if you're comparing Downs and Alec Pierce, it's kind of a what do you need that week kind of thing. If you just need that high floor, Downs is definitely the guy. But Pierce, he might have one of those 70-yard touchdowns. If you're projected to lose by a lot, he might be a guy that you want in your lineup also. But I'm a big fan of Josh Downs. He gets a lot of separation on all the routes he runs. He's just a really solid NFL wide receiver. Yeah, so if he's available in your league, I would go get him because he could be relevant the rest of the season.
Yeah, and he's a deep threat. He's a slot threat. He is a everything threat. So it's there's not a bad thing. I think Anthony Richardson actually does prefer Josh Downs in that wide receiver game. He can get down the field and extend those plays. And he does do little dink and dunks as well, and can create yards for the after the catch for that. Which is something that Richardson excels at, getting that short pass or getting the deep pass. He struggles in the middle of the middle, which is where Pittman sits, and that's why we have seen a decrease in Pittman's usage. So
yeah. On that note, I feel like Pittman might be a little bit of a buy low right now. I think he is the most. I think he's still the wide receiver one in Indy, and if they, he had a weird game this past week, but if Flacco is the quarterback for a couple weeks, Pittman could get some momentum going. For Richardson to come back and
17 targets for Pittman over the last 2 weeks, which is the exact, which is less than Downs by 4. But still doing really well. 14.7 last week, 17.3 the week before. He was playing well with both Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco, so that is good to see. I think this is the lowest you're going to see Pittman in value. So if you are trying to trade for Pittman, if you don't get it done this week, I think you're not going to be able to get Pittman. And I think it's the same thing as with Downs as well. If you don't pick him up this week, we might not be talking about Downs next week because he's over 60% rostered in leagues. So next up, we've got Darnell Mooney, which I cannot believe we are still talking about Darnell Mooney. I think this is week 3 for us talking about Darnell Mooney. It might only be 2. I don't remember. But at this point, you have to pick him up. 59% roster. Get him to that 60% at least. He's got matchups against Carolina, Seattle, and Tampa Bay over the next couple of weeks. He is only being out-targeted by London by 4 targets.
Yeah,
Drake London is supposed to be the guy, and he only has 4 less targets than Drake London does. So he is being used in Atlanta well. And he only has 1 game over the last 4 weeks that has less than 14 points. Darnell Mooney is exactly what Chicago had hoped he would be, but now he's in Atlanta and doing well with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that offense was absolutely humming this past week. Kirk Cousins had honestly one of the best quarterback performances I think I've ever seen. Uh, and Mooney was a huge part of it. He's getting a lot of targets. He had 16 targets in that game. His target numbers the last 4 weeks are 7, 8, 6, and then that's 16. So the 16 is a bit of an outlier, but the lowest in that stretch is 6. And if you're getting 7 targets a game out of a quarterback or out of a wide receiver and an offense that's playing well, that's a great guy to add off waivers. So you can basically get him for free, and I don't see that offense slowing down. I think what we're seeing is them getting to the point that they're going to be at. I think they got off to a slow start because new quarterback, new scheme, all of that stuff. But I don't see a reason why this offense can't keep playing really well. Kirk Cousins is a really solid NFL quarterback, and yeah, I mean, I think I'm looking forward to rostering Darnell Mooney if I can.
Yeah. The only concerning thing here, Ray McLeod got 9 targets. Kyle Pitts got 8 targets. Mooney got 16 targets. Drake London got 13 targets. Cousins threw the ball 58 times. He doesn't throw the ball 58 times
Right.
every game. So that's a bit of a concern. They did get into a shootout with Tampa Bay. It felt like they all had to pass the ball, and that took Bijan out of the game, which we're all feeling the effects of taking Bijan out of the game too. And Bijan got 3 targets. So like the ball was spread around. I don't foresee Kirk Cousins throwing the ball 58 times, but even if you look back in previous weeks where he's not throwing the ball 58 times, he's still getting targets. He's still almost getting double-digit targets every week. And production like that, catching 9 out of 16, 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. Why would a quarterback not throw him the ball at this point? Like, if you're Kirk Cousins, you're like, that guy scored me a lot of touchdowns. I'm going to keep feeding him the ball because he will catch it. So,
yeah. And we're talking about getting a guy basically for free off the waiver wire in 41% of leagues right now. So there are not many guys that you'll see on your waiver wire with as much upside and as much, already seen production as Darnell Mooney.
We're talking about wide receiver 7 over the last 3 weeks right now. And he's can be picked up right now for probably a little bit of fab right now, but go get him. So let's take a quick question here. We got a trade, Tucker Kraft and Ladd McConkey for Jaden Reed, full PPR. I'm taking Tucker Kraft and Ladd McConkey. I don't even have to think about that. I don't even need to look up McConkey's stats, but Tucker Kraft is one of those guys.
I think I'm gonna go with Reed in that. I think he's the best player in that trade for me, but it kind of this is kind of a cop out answer. It depends on what your team needs, but I kind of like getting Jaden Reed. I think he's the better player the rest of the season.
So here's my thought. Right now, Jaden Reed just scored 13 points. They got Love back. Since Love has been back, Jaden Reed has been pretty decent except for last week. They seem to feature Dontavian Wicks. It gets him way too many targets for how many balls he actually catches, which is really sad. Romeo Doubs has to come back this week as well. Hopefully he gets involved back into the offense. We'll see. Tucker Kraft has been a whirlwind of a player the last 2 weeks. 24.8. He's tight end 3 on the season right now after having 2 good weeks. So if you're a team that's hurting at the tight end position, I might lean on the lower upside of Ladd McConkey over Jaden Reed if I'm also getting Tucker Kraft, because I probably don't have a tight end. Or if I don't have the tight end, I'm going to lean that side. If I have the tight end position locked up, I would go with Jaden Reed.
Yeah. Well, I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. Hopefully that's helpful, Aaron. If you have a tight end, go Jaden Reed. If you don't have the tight end, go Tucker Kraft and Ladd. Because Ladd scored 17.7 last week, and he was 5 for 7 on receptions with a touchdown. So he had a pretty good week against Kansas City 2 weeks ago. He was on bye week. Now he's got to go up against Denver, which could be tough. He's got Arizona coming up in New Orleans. So he's got a little bit of a tough road, but they seem to really want to feature Ladd as much as possible.
And he could be
receptions.
He could be a really good PPR guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, the next segment here, we're going to talk about players that are worth a look. First up, we got Bo Nix, who's had a great week, 23.1. It seems like the Denver Broncos have kind of figured out how to play offense, and they know how to play defense. They've seemingly put the two together. Bo Nix has only had one single-digit game this season, and that was against the Jets, where that game was just ugly all around. Nobody did good except for Alan Lazard, and again, nobody scored. I don't think so. Oh wait, no. Bo Nix threw a touchdown last and we were against the Jets. So if somebody did score a touchdown, he just got no points. I think they've figured it out. I don't want to say I'm sold on Bo Nix yet. 9% rostered for a reason. He's still a rookie. He's still gonna make mistakes. That's the thing. He does have 2 tough matchups coming up against the Chargers and New Orleans. They allow the least amount of points to the opposing quarterback. But then he has Carolina, so it balances out. I don't think I would wanna pick him up for the next 2 weeks, but he is worth a look to go out and get for that Carolina game for later in the season. I think Sean Payton can do some work with him, and something that's interesting, he has not thrown an interception since week 2, which is really good. So,
Yeah, he's protecting the ball. Importantly for the Broncos, they're winning games. Yeah, I think for me, he's kind of a mid QB2 still, especially with he's very matchup dependent right now. So yeah, keep an eye on him. If you're streaming at quarterback, you may want to pick him up next week because I feel like he's going to be really targeted for that week 8 matchup against Carolina. So maybe look out for that if you have a quarterback on bye week 8, or actually there are no buys week 8. But if you, for whatever reason, need a quarterback week 8, that's where you're probably going to be starting him next. And you may have to pick him up this week or next week in order to make that happen, because he's going to be a popular streaming candidate if he keeps playing the way he is. So yeah, I mean, keep an eye on Bo Nix. I'm happy to see him playing well. It lifts up everybody else in that offense. So yeah.
yeah. Aaron followed back up. He's got Trey McBride and he'd receive Jaden Reed. So I would go with Jaden
Reed. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Also good for you to have Tucker Kraft probably picked up off of waivers.
Yeah. And
Trey McBride. So that's nice. I've picked up Tucker Kraft a couple of leagues now, and I'm trying to sell him now. So next up, we got Tank Bigsby. I have him on worth a look because I think he is worth a look. He scored 25.9. He was RB1 of the week last week. He's been RB19, even with that RB1 over the last 3 weeks. He's only rostered in 16% of the leagues. He has one favorable matchup against New England in 2 weeks. I know it's at Chicago and London, but anytime the Jaguars go to London, they are the home team. So I think Chicago gets screwed out of a home game this year because of this. They should have just marked it as a away game for both teams, but it is what it is. The reason why I put Tank Bigsby on here is because he was drafted by Doug Peterson. Travis Etienne was drafted by Urban Meyer. Peterson seems to like to go tank a lot more than he really should, with his best player is Travis Etienne in the running game, but it's fine. He was used a lot on the ground against the Colts. Travis Etienne got popped in the shoulder, so that's why his usage went down. But he got 2 touchdowns against the Colts, who was literally the worst defense in the league. So I don't know how to make this. You can say, oh, Tank Bigsby, RB1 of the week, like, let's go get him. But he could also disappoint you for the rest of the season.
I think if Bigsby's available, I'm adding him this week. He looked really good last week, and his numbers were also really good. This 2 weeks in a row, he had 90 rushing yards last week against Houston. I'm worried about the ETN injury. Also, like, keep an eye on that. If ETN doesn't practice this week, Bigsby he's a easy start this week for me. I think he's a good player that is gonna see some usage in this offense, even if ETN is healthy. So yeah, I mean, I am adding Tank Bigsby if he's available in a league I'm in.
Let's move on. Yeah, I can't say any more about Tank Bigsby, and we kind of have a similar conversation with this next one. So, let's get on to keep sad. Similar matchups. Travis Etienne Jr., 99% rostered. Why is he on the waiver show, you might ask?
I did ask that. I thought it was a mistake.
I have him on this list because over the last 3 weeks, he's finished as RB29, which is not his starting running back in fantasy. He scored 12 points last week before getting, quote, popped in the shoulder. Again, drafted by Urban Meyer. He's used less on the ground. He's not used as much with Doug Peterson. But he is used a lot in the passing game, which is nice. He's just not getting the same usage. You probably drafted Travis Etienne as a top-end running back, as an RB1. Expect RB5 season. He has been RB26 this season. He's been getting double-digit points, though, and that's why I say keep stashing, because he will be used in this offense. He's been averaging about upper 60s, low 70s snap percentages, except for the last 2 weeks where he dropped from 52 down to 38 from being injured. Only used 6 times on the ground, but he did catch 6 receptions. So that's nice. I am not selling on Travis Etienne yet. And I think a lot of people are going to be trying to buy Travis Etienne for cheap right now. And you need to keep holding on to him because I think he will turn it around. The Jaguars offense needs to get going. They have been hot garbage all season, except for against the Colts in Jacksonville, which who would have called that one? Definitely not me. All over social media saying this will be the one win the Jaguars will see all season. But that's just my pessimistic.
They get New England in
Colts
2 weeks.
fandom.
Let's
But yeah,
fuck up another
they
one
get New
there.
England in 2 weeks, so that is good. We might even see Drake May in 2 weeks. We don't know yet. I'm holding on to Travis Etienne. Let people go pick up Tank Bigsby if you have Etienne, or go pick up Bigsby because you have Etienne and play the hot hand week to week. But yeah, I'm holding on to Etienne.
Yeah, like you said, I think if you roster him, he's a hold, and if you don't roster him, he might even be a little bit of a buy low if you can kind of trade a guy that is hot right now, and the ETN owner, used a second round pick or whatever and is panicking. Maybe send him a slide in his DMs and see if you can, snag a good running back for pretty cheap.
Yeah. Next up, Alan Lazard. He finished with 13.4 points in London last week. He's been wide receiver 33 over the last 3 weeks. He's only rostered in 37% of the leagues. And you might be thinking, is it time to drop Alan Lazard? They just fired their head coach, but they did not fire their offensive coordinator. So Alan Lazard has been pretty solid. He's targeted a lot in that offense. He's somebody that I think you should continue holding. Might not be starting him, but at this point, targets are important, especially in PPR. And if he's has the ability to catch a lot, that's great. He's only second in targets after Garrett Wilson on that Jets offense. And he's 20 targets ahead of Mike Williams. He is heavily used in this offense, and we know Aaron Rodgers loves him. So I would continue to hold on him as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially with some big bye weeks coming up. You might be in a situation where you need to plug him into your last flex or something. And yeah, the targets are really good. 10 targets in this past game, and Rodgers looks for him in the red zone. He likes him for whatever reason. And so he's, you can bank on him kind of being a guy that'll get those pop weeks.
I was listening to a show this morning. Mike Williams, not even looking back for passes, he doesn't have that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. Alan Lazard does. He literally has only played with Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson. he knows exactly when that ball's coming to him. He knows all of these things. And Alan Lazard is 5th in the league this season in points in the red zone in standard leagues. I just realized that it needs to be PPR. He's 5th in the league with 25.1 points in the red zone, which is the most by any Jets player. At least wide receivers. Garrett Wilson is 10th. Lazard has 8 targets in the red zone, 4 catches, and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. So he's definitely a good guy to have and keep around in case you need to fill in during bye weeks. I'd keep holding Lazard for the time being.
And maybe even put him in your flex.
Maybe, yeah.
Next up, Jerry Jeudy, 59% rostered. He's got matches up against Philly, Cincy, and Baltimore over the next 3 weeks. He has been wide receiver 59 over the last 3 weeks, and he only had 2.6 points in that loss last week, a couple days ago. I don't know what to do about the Browns. Deshaun Watson just walking off the field on 4th down when they want to go for it. Some people say there was 12 people in the huddle and they were going to get a penalty anyway. But that's not a good look.
Yeah.
That's just not a good look. And they need to move on to Winston, but at the same time, like, that cap hit for the Browns, I think, is what's keeping Deshaun Watson in the game. I don't expect Jerry Jeudy to continue to not be used. That was just a really weird game against Washington.
It's a weird game, and it turns out, I guess, Washington's the best team in football
in the league. Yeah,
they've looked incredible the last few weeks.
I mean, I remember at the beginning of the season, you said just start anybody that plays against Washington, and I was following that, and then I'm like, whoa, timeout, wait a minute, this is not working out for me.
It did feel like that, but Dan Quinn is a really good defensive head coach, and I guess they've turned it around a little bit. Although Cleveland, that offense is a train wreck right now. Kevin Stefanski did come out and say Deshaun Watson is the quarterback going forward, and kind of blamed himself for their struggles. But I don't know. I feel like that team needs just like an infusion of energy, kind of like they got out of Flacco last year. If they're gonna turn it around, maybe Nick Chubb can come back and kind of provide a boost in the running game. I don't know. That team needs something. They get Philly this week, and then they get a stretch of home games before their bye week. They've been on the road a lot. This game against Philly will be their 3rd straight road game. So maybe, I don't know. They need something. They need some kind of momentum shift. Maybe that can be Jerry Jeudy. Yeah, I mean, he had 7 targets and 9 targets weeks 3 and 4, and then only 3 this past week. But it's definitely just a weird game. I wouldn't panic if he's like one of the lower guys on your bench. I'd maybe keep him for another week and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, let's move on to players that you probably should wait and check back next week. First up, Keon Coleman, rostered in 51% of the leagues. He has been having a couple good weeks with 11.9 points last week. He's been wide receiver 51 over the last 3 weeks. However, Keon Coleman's not doing a lot with his targets. He's getting targets. He had 5 last week, but he only caught 1 of those for a touchdown. He's very touchdown dependent on points, even with Khalil Shakir out, which is a bit concerning. Because you would expect Keon Coleman to step up and actually have production. His 149-yard touchdown pass was his only reception. He's only caught the ball a total of 9 times this season in the first 5 weeks of the season. That's not great. Yeah, he had 9.4, 8.1, and 11.9, but that's fringe flex material. I don't even think I'd want to start that as the flex. I'm fine having that sitting on my bench. But I would wait till next week, see what he does, because he does have the Jets this week, and the Jets do play well at defense, especially in the passing game. It's one of the toughest matchups he's got. Then Tennessee, and then at Seattle. He does have 3 very strong weeks coming up, but if Khalil Shakir continues to miss some time, you might have to look his way. Curtis Samuel's not been playing well. Khalil Shakir has literally been the only offensive threat for in that wide receiver game. Dalton Kincaid is kind of being used, but not really. So it's kind of been just a struggle for that entire offense. Josh Allen does not look at himself. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel about Keon?
I'll be honest, I didn't love Keon Coleman coming into the season, so I don't have him on a ton of teams, and it just he hasn't really. I mean, he showed something on that touchdown. It was a great run after the catch, but I mean, 1 catch on 5 targets, that's not really the kind of guy that you're looking to roster in most, definitely not in a 10-team league, and starting to get to the point where in a 12-team league, you might be able to drop him. I kind of agree, it is his first year, maybe give him another week. But until we start seeing more signs of his usage in this offense, Josh Allen threw the ball 30 times last week. He only completed 9 passes. It was just a really rough week for that offense. And on the best weeks, that offense seems to be mostly just Josh Allen and James Cook, and maybe a little bit of Dalton Kincaid and Shakir when he's healthy. And that's kind of it. So, if you drop Keon Coleman this week, I'm not going to argue with you. But he might be worth keeping around just because he has shown some big play potential, and shown some ability as maybe a red zone target. But yeah, I mean, Buffalo's weird. There are only a couple guys that you're starting every week.
Yeah, which in the past has been we're starting like almost the entire team: Kincaid, Cook, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, like all of these guys. Now it's like Josh Allen, James Cook, like
yeah. I mean, compare like you look at like Josh Allen did last week, 9 for 30, and then you look at like Kirk Cousins, who threw the ball I think 26 more times and had fewer incompletions than Josh Allen did. It was a really inefficient day for that
well, I
offense.
mean, Jaden Daniels has thrown less incompletions the entire season than Josh Allen did last week. So it's weird. Football is weird this year.
Yeah.
I feel like every year fantasy we say football is weird. People are weird, but this is just weird. All right, let's round this out. We got a couple more here. Quick fire. Romeo Dobbs, 30% rostered. He was suspended last week. He's been wide receiver 90. He has not been doing great. He did not do great with Malik Willis. He has been better with Love, but not to the standard that he thinks he should be getting targeted in this offense and utilized in this offense. He's just not getting that workload. He's got Arizona and Houston, and then at Jacksonville. These are all matchups that are just in the middle of the road. Without Christian Watson, Jaden Reed's stepping up. Tucker Kraft is definitely stepping up. He is the tight end 1 apparently in Green Bay. Do you expect Romeo to actually start getting involved in this offense?
I think so. I mean, it was weird that he complained about his usage because he had 8 targets against Minnesota in that last game he played. I think this is it's going to be a week to week with this offense. I think some weeks Dobbs will get a lot of targets, some weeks Wicks will get a lot of targets, some weeks it'll be Tucker Kraft. Like, I think the only guy who I'm expecting a lot out of week to week in that offense is Jaden Reed. I feel like he's going to be used every week. So a lot of these Packers guys could be a little frustrating to have on your team. But I do think Dobbs will see an uptick in his production, going forward.
Yeah, and speaking of Green Bay wide receivers, for wide receiver 5 on their team, are we holding Wicks or are we dropping for Juju? I assume Smith-Schuster in a half PPR league.
Are there other Jujus?
Are there literally other options? Can I pick a different Juju? We've got Juju Brents, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Juju Hughes. Who's Juju Hughes? I've never heard of this guy. Free agent. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Juju looked really good last night. I don't know, and that Chiefs offense is depleted. So I
20 points from Smith-Schuster last night. So
and more importantly, like, he looked healthy. He was making plays. He made some nice catches. I don't know. I may be tempted to do that.
Wicks is a big play guy. He relies on the big play. 2 receptions off of 7 targets. I can't imagine you keep doing that and Love keeps looking your way. He's gonna go find the guy that's actually catching the ball. I might go Smith-Schuster because what other wide receiver are they throwing it to? The problem for Smith-Schuster is they have a bye week this week, whereas Wicks doesn't. So maybe you hold on to Wicks one more week and then hope Smith-Schuster is still there next week.
It's an interesting dilemma. I'd maybe, if you're going to do that, I would try to trade Wicks today and then make that move. I don't know. That's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much upside Juju has, but like if he's going to be involved in that offense, I think he's a guy that you could roster.
Yeah. Here's a guy that is going to see a downtick in production. Juwan Jennings, week 6. We're already talking about you in a different sense. Rostered in 71% of the leagues. He only saw 2.3 points last week. He has been wide receiver 4 over the last 3 weeks, though. But since then, he's also had, since that 40-plus point game, he's also seen Deebo Samuel come back. He's seen George Kittle come back. He's seen production from Ayuk. They have a bye week in week 9. So we still have 3 games of Juwan Jennings potentially before the bye week. But there's just not enough targets to go around from a quarterback that throws the ball 25 times. So
Yeah.
you're telling me he's also still going to get 12 targets like he got in his 40-point game? I just don't see it. This is a guy that I want to see one more week. I want to see him in Seattle, but I don't think he's going to be there anymore. Like he's going to be 4 or 5 targets unless Deebo goes down again, unless Ayuk falls off, unless George Kittle is hurt again at the same time as Deebo. I just don't see him being there. He might just be a guy you sit on your bench for the rest of the season.
Yeah, he's somewhat of a spot starter. I mean, usually you don't handcuff wide receivers, but if you own or if you've rostered Deebo Samuel and you also have Jennings, maybe stash him on your bench. Week 3 was just kind of a perfect storm for him with Kittle, CMC, and Deebo all out of the lineup. I don't think we're going to see that again, and kind of hope we don't, because we don't want those guys out of the lineup. Jennings is a really important player for the 49ers in real football, but as far as fantasy goes, as long as those other guys are healthy, I just don't know if we're going to see much production out of him.
Jennings is a borderline. You can go ahead and drop this player for me. And I think after next week, he might be on the next segment of go ahead and just drop him. I'm not going to funeralize him like I do every week, but he might be on this list next week of saying, just go ahead and drop Jennings.
Yeah,
but we'll
maybe.
see.
And they might get McCaffrey back week 7. Fingers crossed on that. But yeah, it's
even less targets for Juwan Jennings, because then Christian McCaffrey is getting 5 to 6 targets.
Yep.
Like it's not looking good for Jennings. Honestly, don't drop him, trade him. Like try to get something.
If someone will give you something for him. He's a guy. We're really going full Chris Collinsworth today with our here's a guy. But I would drop him for Juju Smith-Schuster. I think Juwan is exactly the guy I would drop for him. So there you go to answer that question with the Wicks. Although I don't know if that'll be helpful for you.
Yeah.
Let's do a funeral. Let's get a funeral going.
Is it funeral time?
I think it's funeral time.
All right. Let's see. Let's make sure I do this right and don't double it up. Okay, so let's get to the next one.
And now, a moment of silence.
Now listen, if you are still rostering Curtis Samuel in your league, and he's rostered in 17% of leagues, what is wrong with you? Like you have to be 0-5 at this point, right? Like, and if he's starting, I think I looked at Sleeper. He is starting in 17% of Sleeper leagues.
It's rough.
Like,
he did get his biggest snap share of the season last week, but
he had 0.9
but
points.
It was his worst fantasy. It was his worst performance scoring wise.
He can't even get the ball with Khalil Shakir out. I know. And Keon Coleman catching 1 ball.
Yeah, it's rough. It makes me sad. He was one of my guys coming into the season. I kind of
he was a lot of guys. I mean,
he
did well with the Panthers. He did well with the Commanders. He's like, oh wow, we're stepping up to Josh Allen, from Sam Howell to Josh Allen. This is going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's kind of a guy he's kind of a guy that like runs the ball a lot. Kind of has he's been kind of a Swiss Army knife type of player in Carolina and Washington, and I guess Buffalo doesn't see it. They don't see a reason to use him like that, at least thus far. So
This is a guy that was
safely
drafted
drop
as
him.
wide receiver 51, drafted as wide receiver 51, 133 overall. And that's half PPR. Hold on, timeout. We talk about full PPR here.
But incredibly low expectations.
Wide receiver 52.
Incredibly low expectations that he's not even meeting.
Right. I mean, we're talking borderline flex number 3 spot. We're expecting you to play, and you've been wide receiver 95 over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah,
that's tough.
He can be someone else's problem.
He really can be. I mean, I can't even find Curtis Samuel. There he is. He's had 9 fantasy points the entire season.
Yeah.
Like
it's weird though. I mean, he had that. He didn't see more than 37% of snaps.
That was
until this week, and he had 56% of snaps this week. And I mean, we talked about earlier that Bill's offense was strange this week, especially in the passing game. But you don't need to be rostering Curtis Samuel anymore. You can
you can drop him comfortably. Like I
thought
about
yourself
this,
out of your
and
misery.
I really thought about this because he's only rostered in 17%. I'm like, why am I putting him on the list? He's only rostered in 17%. And I'm just like, well, there's 17% of people out there that are just holding on to Curtis Samuel for whatever reason. In Sleeper, he's rostered in 75% of leagues and started in 13%. That's bad. Like that's bad. You're down bad if you're starting Curtis Samuel every week. I'm sorry, but the kid, he's the kid, 28-year-old, 14 points on the entire season. He's caught the ball 9 times.
There are players that have scored more points on individual plays than Curtis Samuel has this entire season.
Alec Pierce, every time he touches the ball, he scores more points than Curtis Samuel has all season. So
there you
go. He's done. You can drop him. We can be done with Curtis Samuel. He's over. It's done with.
It's okay.
Now, if you follow this show, which you should, if you don't follow the show, go ahead and subscribe to our show. I'm really disappointed we can't get that 250th subscriber. We've been sitting here for like 3 weeks now, almost there, and just can't get over the hump. But if you follow the show, you'll know as soon as I funeralize somebody, they're going to pop off this week. This is not the guy. This is not the player that's going to pop off. I'm so sorry. This is not a thing where it's going to be he's dead and then Curtis Samuel scores 20 points. That's not going to happen. And if it does, Derek, clip this for next week because
he just became an ad for me, actually. I go submit that waiver claim now.
He's a must add now.
He's a must add now. We've completely.
So we're at 253 subscribers. That's all we got this week. So be sure to follow us on social media at OUSFFPOD. You can go to our website where you can see our weekly rankings, our waiver wire rankings, and all of our videos at OUSFFPOD.com. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe, like, turn on the notifications because we are giving you episodes every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday for all of your fantasy needs. And of course, be sure to follow Derek. Derek, where can they follow you at?
I am Derek Adam Thomas on X, the site formerly known as Twitter. And that's the best place to find me. I just want to say we're thinking about everyone on the Gulf Coast of Florida. Next couple days. Good luck. Stay safe. Especially, Josh and Dave. So,
Yeah, for sure. But until next week, guys, stay safe. Keep winning your football games. Drop Curtis Samuel. But we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow night, 7:30. Derek and I believe again. To talk about starts and sits. But Have a good one, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. Follow on X and Instagram at OUSFFPOD. We'll be back next week for more ways to win your league.